Good. Good.
I feel like by the end of this, I might know how to play keys a little. But I'm not going to give any secrets, but I don't know how to play keys now. But I might.
I
I
might,
might.
by the end of this, remember to turn my camera off at the beginning.
It's okay. Do you feel like you're an imposter sometimes?
Oh, I did. Sometimes I do still, but yeah, I've wrestled with that mightily.
Did you fight your way through it? Just lots of scrapping in the street to resolve it.
Honestly, I'd like to have a really clever answer about how I battled, and I have these techniques and tricks, but it would all be a lie. The way the way that it happened for me is just by being perceptive and realizing that I'm good. I'm okay. There are very few, very few experts of anything.
So who do you think makes people feel like more of an imposter? Experts or know-it-alls?
I think people make themselves feel like imposters.
Yeah. Turns out it's not. Nobody else actually cares at all what you're up to.
Nobody cares.
You don't matter. You're just going about your life. Nobody's paying attention to what you're up to.
I think so many. This is not a psychology segment, but I think so many of our issues, whatever that issue may be, stem from ego and the sense of me and the sense of self, and like, and by that I mean we're just not that important. We just don't matter, and people don't. I think a lot of the anxieties that we have in social settings and imposter syndrome and nervous to give a presentation, all these things, is that we think so highly of ourselves that we think everybody is evaluating us individually. And I know that's a fairly normal thing, so it's not like a flaw to feel that way. I felt that way, but it goes away pretty quickly when you realize that nobody really cares. They all care about their own selves. They're individually wrapped up in themselves, so nobody really cares about you.
Was there a time that you had a very distinct feeling that you didn't belong, and then something specific happened to make you realize that no one cared, or that you needed to or that you were just fine with it?
So I want to tell first about an example of where I felt like I didn't belong, and I really didn't belong. The perceptions were correct. I didn't know what I was talking about, and when I say didn't know, um, kind of didn't know. So uh, Larry was involved in this in some way, and some folks from Siemens R&D, back when I was with them working on cybersecurity devices, and we were giving a presentation at a really big cybersecurity conference in Atlanta, and I was leading the presentation. Um, and it was a room full of GICSSPs and like really hands-on people that know the space. And I felt very quick. So usually at the beginning of presentations in AI, which is my area of specialty, I would get that same feeling, but quickly realize I'm good. I know what I'm talking about. Well, I quickly realized there that I did not know what I was talking about. So that's one example where the the feeling of not fitting in very much matched not fitting in. I didn't fit in.
How did you end up in that situation? Did you self-assign to show up to this place you didn't belong, or did somebody else send you?
It was a mix of both, and so I had put a little team together to do this demonstration. So my piece of the thing was leveraging cybersecurity to do industrial data science. But somehow I started this presentation swelled into standards and best practices and perimeter monitoring and a bunch of stuff that I'm aware of conceptually, but I don't know the details of. And I felt very quickly that, yeah, I don't know the details, and this room does know the details. Now we figured it out, and at the end, I was able to get back in my lane and talk about data and how to solve problems with data. And we did a demo that was really cool. So all was salvaged, but the beginning of it was a hot mess.
It sounds like basically you had a set you had to deliver, and you were bombing the set, and then you
That's right.
dragged it back out.
That's right. That is correct. It was bad. Now, what you asked specifically, there, I've had a bunch of presentations on data science and AI, and I had that same feeling for the beginning at the beginning of doing these at the beginning of the presentation. But over time, I realized that even it didn't matter who was in the room. Um, the tenets of what I was talking about were solid. And so I think that for me, there were no specific tips or tricks or anything. It was just being around the space and realizing that there's no, I have a tendency to do that. And I don't want to belabor this point, but I have a tendency to make, and this, when we talked about the Stoics, this is what they say, to make a situation like that more than what it is, and think that the president of all things knowledge AI and his cabinet are going to be in every meeting that I'm in, and that person just doesn't exist. And I think you know that's just realizing that's the case, and then also sort of realizing that I don't matter. It's just the information. I'm just another person that's passing the time in these people's day. They don't really care.
That's a universal experience, though, having some sense that there's you know significant gravity to what you're doing. I think it's less universal to realize that the president of all things that matter is not in the room. I mean, there are certainly people that they go from day one to their deathbed, and the whole time, every time they open their mouth, they are certain that the most important person is in the audience. That all the most important people are in the audience.
Yeah.
How old were you the first time you gave a public address?
Oh man. I was young. I don't know, 14.
Were you preaching on the street or something
Well, not on the street, but it was a presentation in church.
about AI? I bet that went over like a. I bet that went over like a fart in church.
No, it was about safe sex and different positions. We went through the Kama Sutra and
Which denomination was that?
uh, the Southern Indiana Salukis. No,
Do you remember what you had to talk about?
I don't. It was something in the Bible, um, obviously, but I don't remember what it was. I just remember
Was
being really nervous.
and did you have to write and so did you have to write this thing, prepare this thing,
Yes.
memorize, or was it like speaking extemporaneously?
There were elements of speaking extemporaneously, but it was a prepared. I had prepared remarks.
Yeah, you pull out the paper and it's just getting longer and longer.
Yeah.
I
It's
feel
like
like I feel like a 14-year-old who's a great public speaker um, is scary because you wonder like what did that person do to
yeah.
get so far ahead of everybody else in this specific kind of self-centered skill set that like nobody else knows how to do it that well.
Well, I think people know how to do it. It's just like the case with everything else in humanity. It's unpacking all the stuff that's on top of that. All of the self doubts and hyper
Right.
inf-
So a really young kid,
right.
not too young, like the old enough to be self-aware. So they're old enough to be self-aware, but they're still able to stand up and either overcome the self-doubt and just be like, I'm going to talk to a big crowd of people. That's scarier than a grown-up getting over the self-doubt. Because you're like,
Actually,
what's that person going to be capable of
yeah.
given their willingness to swallow that doubt?
Or they've been sheltered and they don't realize, you know, they haven't been exposed to peer pressure or like social humiliation or anything like that yet.
Do you consider being a good talker a skill or a trait? Is it learned or is it taught?
I think there are folks that it's a trait, but I think you can learn it. I think there are forms, there are templates for presenting information, whatever that information may be, in an engaging fashion. Now, if we're just taking people out of their natural habitat and plopping them on a stage, yes, there will be a large swath of people who are terrible, and then some people are just charismatic and have the gift.
I'll tell
That
you right now that my ability to address a crowd goes way down in the scenario that you just said. Plopped on a stage with a selection of random other people. Any accolades or kudos I get for my ability to communicate in mass, it's like going to plummet like a stone when you
I
take away any amount of preparation. And it's like, you got to go now, go. That would be a
well,
lot worse.
I did a I did a presentation with you, and it went really, really well. Your bits went really, really well. A, you had great slides, but B, the understated sort of non-assuming style that you have translates really well when it's when it's coupled up with really technical information that that style is received really well.
Okay, so give me the opposite. Give me a scenario where you're super in your element. You feel like it's like breathing. You're like I don't know. You're like a president giving a presidential candidate giving, like, who's up for re-election. You're an incumbent presidential candidate, and you're stumping in some forgettable state that has no impact on the result, and you're talking to your base. What's the example of that for Terry?
We're doing it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, because everything here is authentic. These are conversations that you and I, if we weren't on a camera or whatever, these are conversations that you and I would have. The camera doesn't bother me. The fact that, granted, not very many people, but the fact that folks are potentially watching and or listening to this, that doesn't bother me either. For me, it's comfortable because this is sort of, it's our element. This is what we're supposed to do. Now, there's a degree just a back from that's very similar. And when I'm like in Germany a few weeks back, when I did a presentation over there, I wasn't worried about it, but it's more stiff and rigid, and there are objectives.
Right.
And the objectives are to deliver information that the folks there will have found worth their time sitting through an hour of me gas bagging. And so with that expectations piece comes a little bit of dissonance or a little bit of, I think, and that's the key, I think, is with expectations to deliver something, there's pressure of some sort, however much you want to absorb that pressure. And I think that pressure is what causes a lot of these feelings. At least it does for me.
The first time I had to give a presentation in front of a group, there weren't a lot of boundaries on it. So it was it was seventh grade. I had, I guess, 4 homeroom worth of classes at our daily assembly, and I can't remember if everybody had to do this or just a lot of people had to do it. But I remember at the time I'd been riding my bike to school for a couple years, and uh, my my presentation topic was explain to seventh grade how to change a bike tire, specifically an inner tube. And I remember being like vaguely nervous about the fact that I was going to be standing in front of people and they were going to be looking at me. But um, but I just knew how to change a bike tire. I mean, there was zero ambiguity to this. Like I am capable of. There are these steps. You follow them. I didn't have prepared remarks. I just literally could not have known this anymore. And I still do. And I just stood there and said, "This is how you change a bike tire," while changing a bike tire in front of seventh grade. And there was literally nothing to it,
Yeah.
but it was a huge crowd for a 12-year-old.
So let's, and I have a story on that in a second, but I want to ask you a couple of questions. So have you been plopped in a situation, talk, and it's not material you've prepared. You've had to improv, like you've had to present extemporaneously. And how did you feel about that?
The thing that makes me most nervous is being an audience member in a large room where questions are allowed and having a question that I want to ask, but then having to like ask the question.
I am okay. So even worse than that for me to this day, I cannot stand the go around. The tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
yourself.
I'm not a fan, but I do.
Hey, well, I can.
Do you make it up? Or do you give like a an earnest but sort of sterile?
Oh, I talk about my career in porn, and
It
I
all
just
started in a little church in southern Indiana, the Church of the Kama Sutra.
yeah. No, just I talk about my kids or something other than me. I don't like talking about myself in public settings.
Well, then, do you want me to stop asking you about imposter syndrome in a public setting?
No, because I feel like I don't. This is just you and me having a conversation.
I one of my goals is to be able to have I want to be able to get to where it's a very uncomfortable conversation, but you still don't want to hang it up. I haven't figured out exactly what to do to get there. But it's a very inward looking goal because I think I would find it satisfying. It's basically like um it's as if you basically are just in control of a situation and you can kind of guide where the situation goes. And I find that very interesting. And as long as we're talking about public speaking, I wouldn't say I love public speaking, but I get happy if I am in a room full of people that are way more technical minded than I am and I'm explaining some complicated thing and people are paying attention. I'm very happy when that's happening. It could be frustrating because now it's the point where I'm like, well, these people are all listening and there's heads nodding and this is all great, but I just wish it was 8 times as many people and I was getting paid more.
Yeah.
Like why am I even doing this, right? Like is it entertainment, is it informational, should we all just not even be sitting here? Like this is always in a conference environment. I'm like, my first advice to these conference goers: stop being at a conference,
Yeah.
go see a
Go
customer.
go do
Go see a
something.
customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have though a mental place in your head that if the questions go either that deep or in this direction, you've got a ripcord? Like are there places, because that's I'm in my head too. Like I'm fairly in the weeds with the mechanics of data science. But there are questions about the mathematics behind it. If some asshole were to start asking questions about derivative calculus or matrices multiplication, like I'm going to have to back out of that conversation. And I know that. But I don't worry about it. Do you have a place in a room full of really technical, smart people that are hands on machinists or production operators where you're like, if it goes here, I'm bailing? Or are you good?
All of it. I mean, like there's stuff I don't know is infinite, so I just start with that. How do you handle the fact that you don't know all of the things? I mean, like nobody knows all the things, but how do you
Yeah.
you're standing on stage, you're supposed to be in a position of authority. We've got the corporate equivalent of hecklers throwing hard math at you, and this is a situation where you know, it, it's the thing where sometimes you find yourself thinking, I would like you to rephrase the question in the form of a question from the
Yeah,
conference heckler.
yeah.
And I don't know. I want to know how are you comfortable with the fact that there's always somebody who's ready. Every place you've ever spoken, there's somebody that's got some hard math that you don't know the answer to. So how did you come to terms with that?
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it just doesn't matter. I mean, and we've talked about this for a week now. I think in an applied sense, whatever the discipline, does the thing work?
What
You
do you
know,
think? Do you give a lot of credit for trying?
do like the heckler trying to
No, like say I'm a junior aerospace engineer, and I have some part that I'm building with a new additive manufacturing process, and I have to present it to the blah, 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 blah meeting. And I'm presenting it to the blah, blah, blah meeting, and there's like 10 senior engineers, and the senior engineers are all like, there's this problem and that problem. But there's also management in the meeting, and also the senior engineers who are actually bigger jerks have just completely disengaged and they're checking email while this guy is talking. Like, this is a like he's not exactly the guy that I'm imagining in my mind. He's not full of it. He's not making it up, but he also doesn't really know and is maybe overstepping his bounds. How much credit do you give for trying? And generalize this. Don't We're not talking about public speaking, but just generally somebody who's on the spot to like know a thing and they kind of don't.
so I've been in a bunch of those situations, and I try to discern intent as much as possible. If it's the individuals, and I've seen this quite a few times, and there's a lot of grace for that. If the individual is like, this gets me out of being in the office for 3 days, and I'll come
Oh my
down
god.
here.
If you could actually tell that from somebody you're having to be in the same room as, that's got to be so frustrating to be participating in.
I mean, I respect that more than zero self-awareness guy that just wants to get up and gas bag for the sake of gas bagging. I don't. You can tell. Okay, so I alluded to this the other day. Maybe it was yesterday or one of our past few day conversations about can someone fake it in AI? There are a bunch of speakers in AI. They're hired in the same way that drug reps are hired in the pharmaceutical sales
As a
business.
professional in this space, I caution you to tread carefully on who you insult to their back.
Not going, yeah, not going, not going at their face. I'm just gonna
Just
shoot
a
arrows from the
couple
side.
stabs into the back. You're gonna duck behind a shield and lob a grenade or
Yeah,
two.
yeah, but you can tell they're real happy, like just to be participating, and it's which is what it is. But you know,
Well, there
it's
are
all good.
cases where the field isn't very mature. Maybe AI is like this, but um, having an expert when the whole field hasn't figured X, Y, or Z thing out. So I imagine, if you're at the beginning of computing, it's 1990, which isn't really the beginning of computing, but it's 1990. Like the smartest computer guy in the room. It's a very different room than 2020 with the smartest computer guy in the room, right?
I think I think the toys and the treats may be different, but the psychology is the same.
Oh yeah, that part's true. But that was the same whether we're talking about computing or you know
Yeah.
19th century agrarian transcontinental
Can I
commerce.
okay, so, I won't tell the specifics, but can I in that vein, this wasn't that long ago, like 2013, maybe 2014. I was at a conference. I had to work several conferences for this particular job, and I was at and it's a very industrial company, but I was at a conference where multiple times and multiple ladies would be carrying products as advertisements from one of the vendors at the conference in bikinis through the conference floor.
Booth babes.
Yeah. I'm not like well tailored, tight, clothing,
Just straight
you
up
know,
bikinis. Have
bikinis
you ever been to have you ever been to an industrial event where there's topless women?
after the event.
No, at the
Yeah.
event.
No.
I'm gonna sell drill bits and baling wire and uh, raw cardboard. And also the way I'm gonna sell it is with topless women.
Yeah.
I haven't been to it. I've heard of it, but I've not been myself.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise
It
me.
would make me uncomfortable to be there.
Yeah.
Not because of the toplessness. I'm not that uncomfortable with toplessness, but the context of that toplessness would be hard for me.
I don't like it's not the toplessness or some puritanical point of view. It's just the silliness of like that's really what we're working on here. But I know that's how this all of it works. All of it. Even the most that's how research papers get published. All and it may not be exactly what we're
Wait, I
describing,
was
but
gonna say, are you talking about literal boobs or are you talking about figurative boobs here?
figured and it might not be boobs, but it's whatever the treats and the toys and the things are that move opinions for whatever group is being targeted. It's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff.
All
I mean,
the Twitch stuff our lizard brain is going after.
that's the lizard brain. That's exactly right. That's exact. And for me, that's what it's the realization of, man, really? This is gross. I'm a little naive in that respect, I think. Not anymore because I expect everything to be that way now. But I've gone through phases where it's like, really? Here? Like it, we're talking about controlling power plants and with bikinis, like
Yeah,
the bikini.
it fits in like boobs on a lizard. It just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah. But
Lizards actually don't have boobs.
yeah.
They're not
What
mammals. They
what's
don't.
what's your weirdest conference story? Sorry.
Um, I mean, like watch an episode of The Office and where they have to go off to corporate and like that. That's as weird as it gets. I have a very dull, uninteresting conference life. I enjoy traveling for corporate stuff. Not as much now as I used to. I used to like it more. Somewhere in my mid to late 20s, I hit my stride of, go to whatever, usually industrial city, make sure you pad the trip with a day or at least half a day on either side, do something interesting. If possible, get plant visits in because I like to go see manufacturing facilities like a Mr. Rogers episode. Um, and so, like, the ideal trip would be, you know, the day or a day and a half of useful work that I was interested in with people, preferably that I didn't work with every single day or didn't work with every quarter even, because then you kind of get the best stuff out while you're, popping in and popping out. A nice dinner and, but then on either end, on the bookends, do your own, like see whatever the place is and do stuff there. And so most of the stuff that I liked about corporate events it wasn't a corporate event. I mean, I've done cool stuff via corporate events. I built a car once that was not technically a corporate event, but like my kids playing this racing video game. He moved up from Mario Kart, so now he's in the real actual car. So now he's pointing out car brands in the street and being like, "What's the one with the A? What's the one with the tilty A? What's the one with the H? What's the one with the circles?" And I'm like, "The circles are a T. It's Toyota. It's highly stylized, but it's a T." Uh, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, look, that's the car that I built one of those in Arizona." And he's like, "That one?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I spent 45 minutes trying to find this YouTube clip of the back of my head in this time lapse of assembling this car.
That
And
was
he was
fun.
super unimpressed. But that was a cool corporate sponsored opportunity. It's always fun to go to a lab. I've talked about the slow motion camera.
Mhm.
That was like 27 sub basements deep in some tall building in Pittsburgh. That was cool. I mean, Pittsburgh's a city that'll surprise you. It turns out that there's a lot of cool stuff there, even though there's only 53 days of sunshine a year. So that was a fun trip. Another fun one between DC and Pittsburgh. Drove out to a plant that was in Latrobe, and it was winter, but it was like March probably, and I knew it was a day trip going there and back, and I didn't wear a coat. I just put a suit on and got in the car, hit the Breezewood, and I'm choosing between, do I take the Pennsylvania Turnpike or do I take the back roads? And I'm like, I got plenty of time. Let me take the back roads.
Yeah.
And it was 65 degrees when I left the house. It was 19 and snowing in the
Oh.
mountains. And I'm like, I don't even have the right shoes for this. I don't have any signal on my phone. If this car breaks down, I got a mile and a half walk in the blowing snow on this mountain road in this stupid ass business suit. Why did I make the choices that I made?
Okay.
But that's an extremely typical exciting business trip story for me.
Yeah. We used to have to do we used to do it was a requirement as part of the job in when I first got in the industrial space. We'd have to do site surveys for whatever the controls equipment were that I was designing in. We'd have to do site surveys for the replacements to be machined to be drop-in replacements.
What did you wear to go to these things?
So boots, hard hat. I traveled with I was a lineman. I traveled with all the gear. Steel toe, safety vest, hard
Did you
hat.
switch back and forth between that and the suit, or did
I
you? Or
sometimes
so you
sometimes
were sometimes suit, sometimes just with the gear?
Yeah. So here's this story. This I encountered this in shades multiple times. So this was at a refinery, and this particular control piece, it's an actuator, was at the top of a fired heater's stack. So 200 feet, maybe. I don't know like relative distances. So I don't, whatever it was really, really tall. And this thing was running. And this thing wasn't built for like, there are probably a handful of OSHA violations associated with this thing. There's a ladder that wound around this thing all the way to the top. And so my guy, the engineer that I had traveling with me, he's like, we had to tie off. We had all this stuff that we had to do, safety videos. There were safety videos involved about what to do if you fall and all this stuff. I got halfway up this thing and it was a long way down. And this was the last platform. And it was just straight climb to the top. And this thing's vibrating erratically. I mean, like not just a refrigerator vibrating, it's swaying and vibrating. I got nauseous and I said, the guy's name was Dean. I said, Dean, I'll see you at the bottom. That happened a lot. If you've never crawled around on industrial equipment, it's not for the faint of heart.
Did he make it?
Yeah, he went up and did it. And I was not regarded, I lost my street cred with the three engineers from this facility and my engineer. I'm sure they joked about me the entire time when they were at the top.
I feel like I should spend more time losing my credibility. This is other than the fear that everybody knows I'm full of it, my second biggest fear is that I'm not going enough places to be taken down a notch or two.
Oh, I've thrown myself into some situations I had no business being in. I've had the shit kicked out of me in that respect. So I'm good.
I worry that I'm self-deluding, that the things that should have been taking the piss out of me, instead I'm like, well, I mean, that was fine. It happens. And instead I should have been leaving with my tail between my legs. But because I don't know, because I've become delusional, I'm like, no, that was fine. When it was definitely not fine.
See, but I think that's the product. I mean, I can see you had a good family. You were raised you were raised right. So you don't need like I had to take big swings in life and do things that I was clearly not qualified to do and fake it till I make it. And
And
I've
look at where you are now. Electric car driver. You're literally living in the future.
I've faked it enough times that I I've thrown myself into situations where I have to figure it out very quickly. Uh, Enough times that I actually know what I'm doing now.
When you find yourself surrounded by people who you feel like are judging you, there are really only a couple of different options. I was going to say three, but I haven't actually worked them out in my head, so I'm just going to start talking about them. There's It's possible that you think they're judging you,
Oh, they
and
for sure did in that
and
instance.
they are,
Yeah.
and it's totally justified.
Yes.
And there's not that many ways out of that situation. Either don't be involved in it in the first place, or get the skills, ability, credentials, whatever else to belong there, and then go back to that situation. And like if you're in one where you're judging yourself, they're judging you, and everybody knows that it's, like, it's not working, or you're in the wrong place. And I'm not talking about work. I'm talking about literally your entire life. If this situation arises,
Yeah.
you cannot do anything when you're in that exact scenario other than extricate yourself from it as best you can. Turn heel, run as fast as you can, literally or figuratively, and backpedal. So that's one extreme. But then there's, like, you're in this situation and you feel like you're being judged, and you are being judged, but it wasn't so much about your skill or your ability or whether you belong there, and it was more about how you were carrying yourself into said situation. For example, being a loudmouth is almost universally disliked, and you'll be punished for being a loudmouth. For example, uh, like any place with strict conventions that you haven't figured out the ropes of the conventions, and you are bucking the ropes of the conventions due to either unfamiliarity or you're just a terrible person. Those are situations where if you're a terrible person, you're probably screwed and there's nothing you can do about it. And you just need to never be in a dangerous situation like that. But if you're a regular person, this is when your character has to come through. And, walking back down from the platform, it's not that by itself. Nobody's going to be like, Terry's the worst, we hate him because of that platform thing. You didn't kill somebody. You didn't ruin the project even. Not to say that those two are right next to each other and great.
Right.
But it's not a huge deal. Now, if that was like indicative of Terry's entire way of doing business, is all Terry ever does is go halfway up a ladder, get queasy, and come back down again. And if they start calling you Terry halfway, I mean, now we have a problem. But at least you've gotten the benefit of being told that your issue is Terry halfway. And there's only two ways out of that. You either need to like embrace it and do better because you're young and you still got room to grow. Or if this was happening at your age, no offense to your age, same with my age. If this is happening and you're Terry halfway at your age or my age, you're gonna get very bitter, be very
Yeah.
angry with these people for teasing you. You're drown your sorrows, go buy a
Fall,
couple jet skis.
falling down. The movie Falling Down.
There's so many movies that
Yeah.
illustrate this. You're gonna have problems.
Yeah.
Wait, who? We're gonna have to do a deep dive on Falling Down. I agree with you that the reaction of the main character, the reaction is the same thing you get when you have a bitter person that's been picked on by everybody. But he wasn't a problem with the people around him. He was just focused on himself and thought everybody else was a bunch of idiots.
I,
That's a
so
slightly different scenario.
that's a let's come back to that.
Yeah, we're gonna do Falling Down movie club. I think I bought Falling Down for $5 in a double feature DVD where one movie was on one side and the other movie was on the other side.
I just liked his fit. Like I thought if I go out, I'm going out tie, crisp shirt, nice, I'm
Short
gonna look
sleeves
at the
on the crisp shirt,
short sleeve dress
soaked in
shirt.
sweat,
Yeah, that's the take.
chest puffed and shoulders back. You gotta have, if you're gonna be a psychopath and go on a rampage that by today's standard, not even that
It's mild.
serious a
Yeah.
rampage,
Yeah.
but you gotta do that with a starched collar and really good posture. Where did that movie take place? Was that
I
L.A.?
don't know. We'll come back to the movie. You like in real time unpacked some things. Like you were dribbling between your legs and going between your back
Harry, I
and
really like movies.
well,
That's
hold
really all
on.
this is.
We'll come back to the movie. You said some things in real time that were really really important. Even though this is a lighthearted take on this topic, I have been given the benefit of the doubt my entire life because I've been affable, I've been deferential, I've been kind, I've been authentic. Uh, everything that I have in my life, everything. Yes, I've had to work. I've had to do some things. I went to school. I had to learn some shit. But everything that I have in my life is for those reasons because if you come into situations that I've had to thrust myself into to go from poor rural Southern Indiana guy to electric car guy, if you have to take some big swings. And to take some big swings with a bad attitude, you don't make it. But if you're inquisitive and you're deferential and you're kind, kindness is the authentic and kind, and that walking down off the platform, the guys were cool to me. They gave me the business. They gave me the business for a few days. But what else I did is the kindness and all that. It wasn't that bad. But what else? The other attribute that I have is I never wanted to experience that again. So what do? I didn't just let it go until the next time that the platform started shaking and I got scared and had to go back down. How do I get better at this situation? And those are the 2 points that you brought up, and those are the 2 things that got me to where I am in my life today. Not that I'm you know, the president of all things important and the leader of the cabinet, but I'm also not where I started. And kindness and the soft skills and really ambitious and the desire to improve on things that I'm weak at. Exactly what you described is why I'm where I'm
Part of me was wondering if the end of that explanation was going to be, and it ends today.
at.
I'm sick of putting on this facade.
Yeah, no, it doesn't end because
There's no end.
life just gets better. The more things that you can encounter, they never stop. Okay. The problems, the trials, whatever you want to call it, the difficulties of being human never stop. But the more you can greet those things with gratitude and generosity and kindness, regardless of the situation, I mean, the things in the Bible and in the writings of the Stoics and the mystics and Eastern philosophy, all these things are not just there to take up word. They're not just words on a page. They're blueprints for how to get through this without feeling like you want to, you need to take 47 different pills or, like they're living by these things are it's important. Sorry. Didn't mean to preach.
Um,
You did it though. Your explanation did it.
anybody who can stomach any sort of manual labor or blue collar work or whatever, like basically just long hours and being sweaty at the end of the day. If you could possibly handle it, you should do it, at least for a while. I remember I worked at a moving company because the pay was good. And when I was I don't know, it was probably high school or college. And, um, it was like a very, very distinct set of cliques, right? There's the seasonal workers who come in for the summer. There are the year-round workers who are just doing this as their life. By and large, the year-round workers had kids approximately the age of the seasonal workers, and then there was like the monkey wrench thrown into it, like the Romanian crew that was shipped over as bonus capacity, put up in a townhouse down the street, and all given bikes to come in, and like they only spoke to each other. They worked 27 times as hard as everybody else, and there was some like minimum wage exception made or something like this. I'm sure that whatever it was totally legal.
Legal for sure.
Totally legal. I mean, this wasn't small town stuff. This was like big city moving company. So if it was, I don't know why I'm assuming that big cities are not capable of committing employment law fraud. My point here, a lot of the people that were seasonal were really deeply disliked by the people that were year round. Some of the people that were seasonal were unlikable and were disliked by everybody. A tiny handful of the people that were seasonal were just likable people, and everybody liked them because they were likable. And I was somewhere in the middle where I'm like, say nothing, be like, let channel your inner Romanian teenager brought over here to work hard and quietly, hard, fast, and quiet, and just like, don't worry about it. Just do your job.
I
And
think
watching the people to the side, it wasn't boot camp. We're not talking about basic training, but watching the people to your left and the people to your right like fall down and not make it. That was that was a more memorable, one of these people isn't going to be here, then welcome to college. Look to your left, look to your right. One of these people isn't going to be here. That didn't resonate at all. But like everybody who's full time hates that college kid. That was like, oh man, I don't want to be the hated college kid.
Yeah.
How do I do it? How do I not be hated? Sweat. That's the way. Just sweat hard. Shut your mouth.
So I think what you just described is the key to anything in this thing that we do. Anything like zip it, work really hard, and try to fit in that context. And I think we have a habit, you and I, of saying you can't quantify what today is more or less versus what yesterday was more or less because we don't have those numbers. I would say that's probably not applicable here. I think that quality, those qualities that you just explained, are in short supply today.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And absolutely will not generalize from saying in short supply today and therefore we're in long supply at any other time. People have hated the people next to them who won't shut up during the workday since the pyramids, man. Like there's universally been
No, I
the
mean,
obnoxious flakers
for
and the
sure.
quiet doers.
But I mean more the even for obnoxious people, they become obnoxious. But when you first enter a situation like that, my default response is to shut my mouth and be friendly and be kind and
Yeah,
work
and
really
I'm
hard.
saying that's been a minority of people's approach
Fair, fair,
forever.
fair.
Not necessarily like you're
I
not
disagree, but I'll say
you're
fair.
not in the rarefied air. You're not a unique snowflake who is the only person doing this and everybody
Sure.
else is a jerk. But like it's definitely it's still a minority compared to the fat middle of people who are just not that interested in shutting up and working. And I also full disclosure, I don't apply this now. This was 20 years ago I was doing this. Like I don't there's not a situation where I would just shut up and work now for the most part. I would say that I literally am talking to talk and I often avoid work. So there's the there's the there's the story arc for you.
Well, I think full circle. I think the you started this off. We started off by talking about imposter syndrome, and I think for me, what you just explained is what got me through a lot of that. Of learn, be quiet, be kind, ask tons of questions. I jokingly in a presentation that I just gave, jokingly called myself the CQAO, Chief Question Asker Officer. I ask millions of questions. And that is, I've done this my whole life. Like learn, observe, watch, ask, be kind, work hard, be early, do like all the, I, I did all, except for in sports. I wasn't that way in sports, but anyway, I yeah.
Terry's
I
tips.
If you want to beat imposter syndrome, shut up, put your head down, work hard, ask a lot of questions, be humble, be kind, and you'll beat it.
But also don't be a soulless drone
Yeah,
while you're busy doing those things. Make sure that you're not a soulless drone.
exactly.
All right. See you next time, Terry. Thanks for unpacking your imposter syndrome in public. I'm sure that was well, actually I guess now it's not hard for you. It was easy for you because
I'm,
you've gotten past it.
this is the easy version of it. I can
Yeah.
talk about it all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate it.
yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to answer my many questions and having some of your own.
You're, you're,
See you next show.
you bet, man. Have a good afternoon.